Matthew 11, 1-6. John sends disciples to Jesus. The number that we'll be featuring is number 4624, stumble, a verb, to stumble. And we'll be pointing out the nouns in this section here, color-coded by their declensions. Now, the nouns, here we begin, as I said in the last video, how I would bring out what it has in our free grammar you can download. On our website, it says the noun is the building block of any discourse. The verb is the vehicle delivering the building blocks, and the adjective describes the building block. The preposition describes where the building block is or will be located. A noun is generally any word which one could attach the words a, an, or the to, such as a man, an engine, or the horse. In Greek, nouns are inflected, that is, they change spelling depending on gender, number, and case. Noun inflections in English is not as intricate as in Greek. Thus, many potential students signing up for an academic Greek class, seeing the amount of memorization needed in learning the paradigms, decide not to learn the Greek. Now, if you were in a class, you would see the nouns, every noun would have a paradigm like this. And there's the nominative. Now we have anthropos, and then the nominative plural, anthropi. That's the subject of the sentence. And genitive, anthropou or anthropon, is the possessive, the thing that of a man or of men. And the dative is the indirect object, to or for a man or two men. And the accusative, which is the object of a sentence, of the horse belonged to a man. So a man there would be accusative. The object was the man, anthropon, anthropous. Then we have a vocative or vocative. Doesn't appear too many times. This is when you say man, or whatever the noun would be. Anthrope and anthropi, men, same as the nominative there in the plural. And so in the grammars of the past, the nouns are listed in paradigms by declension, inflections of unique spellings, as is displayed in the paradigm above. Declensions are beyond the scope of this study guide. One was required to memorize the endings of all declensions, but with the analytical lexicon of the Apostolic Bible, right here, our method of study is not necessary, as the information is given in the analytical lexicon and is explained in the study guide, which appears in the front of the printed edition. So now, what would it be in the analytical lexicon? Well, we'll go here to the first verb that we will be featuring, a disciple, in the text here. And we see that it's in the dative, mathetes, dative plural. So this is all alphabetical. So whenever you see the word, let's go to the first noun, ageneto ote, atelesen oisus, diatason, tes dodeka mathetes avtu, and it came to pass when Jesus finished setting in order to the 12 disciples. Now here Jesus is the subject. It's a noun, but we don't number the personal names of places, people, places, or things. But here we have the mathetes. So you see 3101, and then you would go to the analytical lexicon, open it up, and there's 3101, and you look at it. Helps to learn the alphabet, and so you'll see the mathetes is the third one down. We know it's a masculine noun because it says masculine up here. And the nominative, the mathetes, as a disciple, is the nominative singular. So down here it also appears mathetes, as it does appear in the text of the Apostolic Bible. It could, if it was the lemma, it's called Greek word for that noun, it would appear at the top, and it would have the meaning for the noun, ekos, house. But then, like in this place here, that spelling may never appear in the Bible. It may be a noun that's only used a few places, and so it wouldn't appear down any place in here. And so the lemma may or may not be in the text in the Apostolic Bible. But all the rest of these you'll find in the Apostolic Bible, unless they were taken out, and I missed taking them out of the analytical lexicon. But it's not going to hurt anything to leave them in there. Now, we go back to our paradigm, nominative, genitive, dative, accusative. And the singular or plural is what we are going to go through. And I've color-coded these where the subject is red, the genitive of possessive, possession, is orange, the dative is a mint green, and the accusative is a brown, and the vocative, if I run across it, I'll have to figure out what color I'm going to use. So Jesus set in order to the 12 disciples. Setting in order, number 1299, the atasso. In Luke 3:13, it says, "And he said to them, exact nothing before beyond that being set in order for them." That was the tax collectors when he was talking to them, or maybe it was John, but so beyond that being set in order, put out, telling people what they're doing, to or do or not to do. And then Luke 17:10, it says, "Thus also you, whenever you should have done all the things set in order for you, say that we are useless servants, for what we ought to do, we have done." So being set in order for a servant. God has set things in order for you and for me. We each have different orders. And my order is to finish the Apostolic Bible Polyglot in one way or another. And I finished the Old and the New Testament with the video on both, and the Bible, the printed Bible. Now I'm going through the New Testament. This is the order that God is setting up to me. Of course, it could be also you'd be setting it up for yourself. Doesn't necessarily mean it has to be God setting it order for you. God never came to me and said to do the New Testament. It just came into me to do it because I wanted to do it and bring out the Greek. Now, you may have a completely different thing to set yourself in order to, or someone else who set it in order for you. If you're in the army, then your orders are given, set in order, and you do the best you can to fulfill the orders of your superior. And then it continues, metevi, ekethan, to didaskin, ke kirisin, entes, polisin avton. And he crossed over from there, probably on the boat, to teach and to proclaim in their cities. And the cities is a noun, and it is in the dative. So you could look it up in the analytical lexicon, 4172, look up this spelling, and it would say it was a dative plural. In verse 2, O they Ioannis akusas into desmutirio ta erga tu Christu, when John, and he's the subject, having heard in the jail desmoteriou, the works of the Christ. We have desmoterio is two, and that's in the dative, and it's a singular. You can look that up in number 1201. You'd see it. The works, and that's another, having heard, when John, having heard the works. So the works is the object, and that's in the brown, and the erga is in the plural, as you would see if you looked up 2041. So having this analytical lexicon, which has the study guide that we're going through in the front of it, is invaluable if you really want to study the word. So John is in prison, been imprisoned by Herod Antipas the Tetrarch. He was a ruler of 1/4 of the area in that Roman occupied area, and he was a son of Herod the Great, one of the sons of Herod the Great. So he put John the Immerser, that's who this John is, into the Desmoterio. And then it says, Pempsas theo ton mathi ton of two, and having sent two of his disciples, or of the disciples of his, if you wanted to do it that way, you could give the tone. Influences a noun, or the noun influences, is the article and the pronoun. The article influences the noun when it has the works. You could have just plain works without the article. And the gives it more emphasis. The article gives the noun more emphasis. The works of the Christ, or you could just put works of Christ, take out the two articles if you wanted to, and it would make just as much sense, but it would lose the emphasis with the. English, we have the and we have an, a car, an automobile, a. Greek does not have what's called the indefinite article, which would be a or an. The indefinite article would be a noun that doesn't have the article. So then you would use a or an, or nothing at all, if that was grammatically okay. Now the nouns are influenced by all the articles. Influences tells us something about the noun. Now the pronoun that we have just went through a lot in the last 4 or 5 sections, like avto right here, that influences the noun that it's referring to. Disciples said to him, to Jesus, or the Christ, actually here, to him, Christou. So knowing the pronouns and the articles helps to figure out who is being referred to and so forth. And we know by the nouns what the subject of the sentence is, so all you have to do is go find which here would be the red word, or and you would know, sort of reddish, purple maybe, you would know that was the subject, and you could color code it if you wanted to. And then the genitive of, I think then we have that one there, mathitas, no, this is mathiton, genitive plural, there it is, mathiton, 3101, see, 3101, it says it's masculine, they're all masculine. So you know then that if you looked it up and you wanted to know more about it, then it would tell you that that's a genitive plural. It's a possessive of something or someone. Pempsas theo ton mathiton of two of his disciples. So this would be of him, of John. We'd be referring to John and his disciples, and they're plural. Now verse 3, it continues, and said to him, the two disciples, "Si o erhomenos, are you the one coming, or the coming one? E eteron prostokos komen, or another are we expecting?" John has sent them in asking if he's the coming one. Now, earlier John immersed him and saw the dove come down. So it's kind of strange why, when he's in jail, would he be asking? It wasn't the first time that he was asked. We see in John 10:24, one of the festivals, it says, "Then the Jews encircled him and said to him, 'For how long do you carry our soul? If you are the Christ, tell us in an open manner.' And Jesus answered to them, 'I told to you, and you believe not. The works which I do in the name of my Father, these testify concerning me.'" They ask, the Jews ask. Then, Matthew 26:63, it says, "And responding, the chief priest said to him, 'I adjure you, according to the living God, that to us you should say if you are the Christ, the Son of God.' And Jesus says to him, 'You said it.'" Then Luke 14:61, again the chief priest questioned him and says to him, "Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed?" And Jesus said, "I am." And then Luke 22:67, it says, "If you are the Christ, tell to us." And he said to them, "If I should tell to you, in no way should you believe." So John is also asking. We'll go a little bit more into John in the next section, so I don't want to jump ahead. In verse 4, "Ke apokrythis o Isu," so here's the nominative subject, Jesus, "Epen avti," said to them, "Parevthentes apangilate Ioani," and that's to John in the dative, "a akuate, ke vlepete," what you hear and see. And Jesus, so go back and here it is, "Tifli anavlepusi." Now, all these are adjective. You would think that this was a noun in the plural, but it's not. It's an adjective, a blind one, a blind man, blind men, whatever it would be. And this is called a noun substantive because it stands by itself without what it's modifying. It's maybe modifying a man, if it was anthropos here, a blind man, anthropos, but it doesn't have anthropos, it's just by itself. So it stands by itself, and that's what it means, a noun substantive. It's not acting as an adjective, modifying another word. It's not modifying a blind woman or a blind dog. It's modifying the noun by standing alone in this case. If it would have man here, then it would be a complete adjective. It wouldn't be called a noun substantive. So all these are adjectives, noun substantive. So tifli anavlepusi, ke holi peripatusi, the peripatetics, people that walked around. Lepri, leprous man. Katharizonte, ke kofi, deaf mutes, deaf man, deaf woman. Akusi, nekri, dead men, but here I add the ones to give it a little bit of sense in English. The dead are raised, or dead are raised. You don't have to have the ones, but I have that there so a person could see it's plural. Ke patoki, evangelizonte, poor ones are announced good news. So this is what they are going to go back and tell John, through all these things. In verse 6, ke makarios esti os ean me skandalisti en emi. Now, here we have this word makarios, blessed. It has an accent 2 places on the word, and the word following doesn't have it, so it's like sounds like one word. Makariostistin, makariosistin. Whenever you see that type of a structure with no accent, when it has two vowels. So Makarios, he says, is the one os ean me skandalisthi en emi, who would not be caused to stumble in me. Now this is our key word that we're going to study a little in 46:24. Appears 30 times only in the New Testament, and 14 times, almost half of the places, in the book of Matthew. And a few places it's offended instead of causing to stumble. The stumbling is a little bit more intense than somebody being offended. It hurts your feelings or something like that, but stumbling is really bad. And so it says in Matthew 5:29 and 30, it goes into the whole thing about if your right eye and your hand causes you to stumble, then cut it off, and better to have them cut off and to go into the fire of Gehenna. Matthew 13:21 says, "And affliction or persecution on account of the word, straightway he is caused to stumble." And the person this is, I think, the seed that falls upon the wayside, stumbling in God's over the persecution on account of the word, then you stumble away from Christ for a short period of time or a long period of time. It doesn't really say, but you're basically no longer on the same path, or you might be on the path, but it's an event. In Matthew 13:57, it talks about the ones of his fatherland were offended by him, things that he was doing. It doesn't say they were stumbled, they were offended. Matthew 15:12, the disciples say, "Do you know that the Pharisees, the ones hearing the word, were offended?" So they weren't stumbled because they didn't believe anyway, so they were just offended. So that could be either one. Matthew 17:27, Jesus tells Peter, "But that we should not stumble them," that would be the Pharisees who came wanting the tax for the temple. He says, "Having gone to the sea, throw a hook." And first coin he takes out of the fish's mouth to give it to these men, which he does. In Matthew 18:6, "And whoever should cause to stumble one of these small ones trusting in me, it would be advantageous to him that a millstone of a donkey should be hung upon his neck, and he should be sunk in the open sea." Causing a believer to stumble, the person that does that is going to be in deep trouble, rather than just somebody that's lived a life and maybe sinned, didn't believe, but really didn't cause any problems for any believers per se. But if somebody causes the believer, now a person that doesn't believe can argue with a believer, and he believes in another God or something like that. Well, that's probably not as bad. But if you cause the person to stumble, almost to get away from God, then they are going to be in deep trouble. In Mark 24:10, it says, "And then many shall be stumbled, and they shall deliver up one another, and they shall detest one another," when he's talking about the end times, being stumbled. I believe that's what we're seeing a lot today with the Christians stumbling. Matthew 26:31, Jesus says, "All you will be stumbled in me in this night." And this was in the upper room at the Last Supper. And he said that they'll all be stumbled. And Matthew 26:33, it says, "And responding, Peter said to him, If even all were to stumble in you, I at no time shall be made to stumble." Which, of course, he did stumble 3 times, as Jesus will point out. Stumbling, well, I've stumbled. I believe we all have stumbled one way or another. And stumbling, a lot of times, it's keeping our eyes off of the Lord or keeping our eyes off of His Word. not seeing who he really is, not trusting in him, going blind, or being in sin, living in darkness for a while, and that can stumble a person. Or pride, thinking that you have everything under control, sort of like Peter here. I'm not going to stumble. Nobody's going to. But yet, that pride can be what causes a person to stumble. So we can take note of this wonderful section about the stumbling and ask the Lord to help us not to stumble, to get through this life without stumbling, to keep us from stumbling, and keep the things that cause us to stumble. As he said, anybody that causes the smallest of these to stumble. So there are people that want us to stumble, put things in front of us, traps, money, or power, all sorts of things that we can take our eyes off of the road and stumble. So we can pray that the Lord would take these stumbling blocks away from us. The next section, Jesus speaks concerning John.